Hey everybody, welcome back to Esther again. We're going to be doing chapter 7 and 8 today, and so if you want to read along, I am going to be picking up. Let's start right here where we finished off. We see that Haman has been come and swooped up and taken to the second banquet, and so we ended up where the king had a night that he could not sleep. So on that night could not the king sleep. And he called for the chronicles to be read, and things just took a pivot. So a turn, a shift. And we're going to be headed, what was going on a downward spiral, headed to a bad place. We are now kind of looking up a little bit, y'all. So Haman, his fall was predicted by his own family. In verse 13 of chapter 6, it says, "And Haman told his wife and his friends what had befallen him. And then they told him that he had begun to fall and he would surely fall." And so 3 times we see a reference to him falling in that one verse right there. And at that moment, the king's chamberlains come in and hasted Haman out. He didn't even have time to even think about what was going on, but I'm sure it was rolling through his mind. Okay, so let's pick up in chapter 7 and verse 1. "So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said," again, this is the second time, so pay attention to some repetitions here of things like the second time things happen, or the second day, or number 2. Okay, so, "And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed unto half of the kingdom. And Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and it please the king, let my life be given me as my petition, and my people at my request." She wastes no time here. Like before, she kind of hesitated and requested a second banquet. The reason was not given in scripture, but I know that God, being God and sovereign and ruling over all things and calling the shots, He is working with mankind here and even on the earth today. And so she just jumps right in there. Give me my life. That's what I'm pleading for, the life of my people. And then she goes on and she says, "For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. If we were only being sold as bondmen and women, I would have held my tongue. I would not even have made this request," is what she's saying. And then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, "Who is he? Where is he?" Y'all, he's in the very room right there. Who is he and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, pay attention to her words, "The adversary, the enemy, is this wicked Haman." And Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. "And the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath." So we see a banquet of wine, the king in his wrath again, but this time things are on a flip side. "He went into the palace garden, and Haman stood up to make requests for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king." He knew he was as good as dead. "Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king," pay attention to this, what the king saw and thought in his mind, "Will he force the queen also before me in the house?" As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. The tables have turned. One of the chamberlains said unto the king, So there were other people there, and this is what he made known. Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai. Haman had made these gallows to kill Mordecai the Jew, the one that the king had just delighted to honor and to bring a blessing upon, because he had the chronicles read to him that this Jew, this Mordecai, had saved his life. He had spoken good for the king, and standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him on it. So that very pit that the wicked adversary, evil Haman, that very thing that he thought evil of for the children of God, that thing is turned on him. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. Remember, earlier in the story, we see where the king's wrath, after a long, hard battle and war, and he come home and he remembered that what had been done to Vashti. Okay, that was in between the end of chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2. So now we're going to see, starting in chapter 8. In chapter 6 and 1, it started out on that night. But right here in chapter 8, it says, on that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jew's enemy, unto Esther the queen. So we see changes occurring. There is a shift in ownership here. And Mordecai came before the king, and Esther had told what he was unto her. So these things that had been concealed, they are being revealed now. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. So we see power being shifted out of the hand of the enemy, the wicked one, the adversary, and then placed in the hand of the Jew, the one that the wicked adversary thought to kill. So that ring, he took it off of Haman, and he gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So we see another elevation here, another promotion for God's children, for the Jews. And Esther spake yet again. This is the second time she comes into the king, unsummoned. And she falls down at his feet and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Remember, the decree had went out, and the king's word could not be changed. Then the king held out the golden scepter unto Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the king. She said, listen to her words again, if it please the king, if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing be right before the king, and I be pleasing in his sight, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman to destroy the Jews, which are in all the king's provinces. Remember, this is a vast amount of territory. A lot of people are going to be hurt. And she is crying out for a reversal of this. But the king's word could not be changed. But a new decree could be made. Esther's talking about, how can I endure to see this evil on my people? How can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, pay attention, listen up. About to give you a word here. I have given Esther the house of Haman. They have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse The other one could not be reversed, but a new one could go out. And he is telling her, because he knows protocol. He knows what it is to be the king, and he knows what his power and authority represents. And he hands it over to Esther and Mordecai to do with as it pleaseth them. He's saying, behold, pay attention to what I'm telling you. Then were the king's scribes called at the time of the 3rd month in the month Sivion on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews and to the lieutenants and to the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces. Remember how it was told earlier in the story how grand and great this place was. Mordecai didn't leave out anything, any place. According to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, the Jews according to their writing and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name and sealed it with the king's ring and sent letters by post on horseback and riders on mules and camels and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take spoil of them for prey. So I'm going to pause right here for just a minute. I want you to think about this. Think about, I made notes here, and I want you to do that whenever you're studying. I want you to note down the things that stand out to you, things like the number of times that things occur, reversals of things that are the flip side of the story and how it is now being reversed, and moments that you can see God's hand at work and the ways of God that are being revealed. And then note that Haman is described as the enemy, the wicked, the adversary. And who does he sound like? He sounds like Satan. And notice the words of Esther, which is the queen, which is the bride of the king. And pay attention to who our king, King Jesus, is. And we are the bride of Christ. And listen at what the king is telling his bride. Listen at her words as she's asking, if it pleases you, my king, if I found favor in your sight, if it's right to the king. And then the king gives them the authority to also decree and to put forth a word to go out. And this is what the word was that they put out. Stand for your life. Fight against every wicked, evil thing that the enemy is coming against you with. Fight against that. And do it with the authority given to you by the king. Okay, I'm going to pick up here in verse 12. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, the copy of the writing of the commandment be given to every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So they had to take action and to fight. Now we know that we are living in a day and age now that we don't fight the same kind of warfare as other folks do. We don't fight in the same way. We fight spiritually, spiritual battles. Okay. But here, this was war. This was different. So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out. being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given unto Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. Now before, when Haman gave out a word, they were perplexed. They were not rejoicing. They were not glad. But here, verse 16, the Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and decree came. The Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell on them. Wow. 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 We got 2 more chapters left. And all I can say is, won't he do it?